Hello everybody, I'm Chase, and I'm back with a new video. Today, I wanted to go more in depth about loops and switches and switch blocks. So, last time I kind of went over the switch, and I used the loop a little bit. But I wanted to go over it a little bit more because they are pretty helpful, and you will be using them a lot. So, the switch block can kind of be mimicked with a loop block, because once a loop block is done running, it plays whatever's after it, if there's anything after it, right? But a switch block will always play the this bottom program here until you do whatever its action is, right? And then it will play the top block. So it's pretty helpful if you want to do some things like that. You can also do tabbed view, which sometimes is a little bit less confusing, but it also looks kind of like loops, so I usually try not to do it like that. And then there's also the loop interrupt block, which I'd also like to go into today. So if you noticed, you can name loop blocks. And when you name a loop block, you can name it whatever you want. If you want to name this loop loopy, you can name it whatever you want. And then the loop interrupt block, you can also name whatever you want. And if you name it the same as a certain loop, when this block plays, it will immediately stop the loop and go on to play what is after the loop. So even though this loop is set for unlimited and will run forever, if it hits this loop block, it will stop this loop and play this switch. Now this program wouldn't do anything, it would just sit there, and as soon as you press the button, it would go to the switch, but even the switch wouldn't do anything, but it would keep running until you played the touch sensor. But it wouldn't do anything. There's nothing here for it to do. So loop blocks are really cool because, as you saw last time, they can run something a certain amount of times. If you select count, it'll run the loop 3 times or 7 times or however many times you input here. You could run it twice. But for today, we are going to let it run for unlimited. There it is. Okay. And we're going to keep our loop's name Loopy because I think it's kind of funny. And then we're going to also use the switch today. The switch is pretty cool. You can do lots of things with it. But we're just going to have this move forward. We're going to turn this for on. Okay. And then we are going to set another motor block over here for off. Okay. And so that means it will turn on the motors over here. Okay. And then it'll immediately turn it off once it hits the loop interrupt block we're going to put in here. So here I'm going to set this touch sensor to bumped, and then I'm going to set this loop interrupt in front of it. Sorry, up here. There we go. That should work. But we also got to make sure to name it Loopy, because now when this is played, it will stop our loop here. So then we save it, and then we download it, and we're off to go test it. So now that we've tried that, you can see what the loop interrupt does. And you can see what a switch does. It plays this block, right? And then it plays this block when this action is satisfied, right? So this one, you just have to bump the touch sensor, which is completely in and out, and it stops the loop with this block, and it plays this. So a lot of times you probably will not end up using on-off motor positions, just because you want to be a little bit more accurate with your movements and you want to move precise distances. But when you're only using sensors to determine if your motors are moving or not, the on-off motors will always be really good for that decision. So now that we've seen how all these work, we can try using another loop, right? And you can do other things. So the loop interrupt block is sometimes useful. I usually end up not using it though, just because I like to be a little bit more precise. And it's a little bit less confusing to me when I just use a loop, right? And I set it for the same condition as this switch here. Okay, and then if I take move tank, and I take another move tank, and I set this one for off, this one for on, this one will do this right here, will do the exact same thing as all this right here. But this one is sometimes a little bit easier to understand for some people. Sometimes this is a little bit easier to understand. Personally, I like doing this though, because it's a lot more straightforward and right to the point, I guess. But either way, once you've made your program on the left here, you will once you're done working on tweaking it or making it work how you want it to, you can set a comment block, right? And you'll have moves until you bump the touch sensor. Oh gosh. Sensor. There we go. Now, I know what all of this does when I have a massive program that strings off to the side and is hard to fit on your computer. Now, if you press this little button here when this has a big old tail right here, you can actually click on it and it'll make it all it'll tidy up a little bit. Sometimes that's pretty helpful when you have this massive unruly program that's been getting everywhere. So I dug into my computer and found some files from my old team for the 2018 mission for these EV3 robots. And my team did pretty well that year, and I think it was my last year on FLL team, but it was pretty fun. So there are lots of different runs on here. There's run 1, run 1A. I think this one's called, yeah, this one's velocity. We didn't really have we had a run 2 and 3, but they got replaced by other runs, and then run 4 and 4A. And so not to get confused, we just kept going on with the numbers, so it's kind of weird. But some of these programs are really simple. This one's literally 2 blocks. It goes forward. One motor goes a little bit slower than the other, so it runs into the wall while it's going so that it makes sure to go straight. But otherwise, this program goes backwards and forwards with the robot. And also has a comment block. This one's pretty easy to see, and so this one's not a problem. But if we look at run 4, this program right here, run 4 is a little bit, it does a lot more than just go forward, right? So, but even though it's been a few years, I still know, I can still see what it does because I have all these comment blocks. So even then, I would sometimes get confused because this is kind of a longer program, right? It's doing a lot of stuff. And obviously it didn't always work because I didn't know as much as I do now, even. But it did work a lot. And so obviously simplicity is better. Like right here, this one obviously, this one worked 99% of the time. If it didn't work, it was because you did something wrong. But here, this program, it talks about a lot of things. So like this one right here, this message right here tells what the program does. and there was a note to myself about how it was different from Run 4A. Run 4A does something different. It only does, well, here it says it only does crater crossing, which was one of the missions from last year. But this program, it's pretty long, right? If it all went out straight out to the side here, it would be really long. You wouldn't be able to fit it on one screen, and if you tried to print it out for the judges wouldn't really be able to see it. And you want them to be able to see it because you did a lot of work on this, and you want it to work. So what you want to do is you want to fit everything on one screen as best you can. Now, I understand sometimes the program will get really long and really unruly, and it's just everywhere. But if you fit it as best you can with all your comment blocks and everything in a small space like this, my laptop was has quite a bit smaller screen, so it would look a little bit more like this when I printed it out. You could still pretty much see it. But as long as you can see all of it and it's easy to read, you should be pretty good. You want to make sure to do that, though. But it's pretty easy, right? If these are here, right, you want to make sure to keep the comment block with it. But if you want to move it, you just highlight it with your mouse. You can drag it over here. And then what you do is you take this wire, right? You can move it anywhere you want. You take it over here, and you plug it in here. You put your mouse right here. There you go. You can also move these wires around so they're not in your way. You want to make sure they're not covering things up because that also won't look too good. And now we have all these comments. We know what it does. We can see it easily, and that should help quite a bit in the future. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.